It's the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, so I'm Mike Sloan. I'm the CEO and founder of Simple Labs. We make a product in the wine and spirits space called Cogni. I grew up in bourbon country and got to know a lot of distillers. And then now I live in Napa Valley and I've got to know a lot of winemakers. And there's two things that you notice when you work with these people is one is they are very interested in making premium level stuff, the best possible stuff they can. And two, they face a lot of daunting challenges that they're having a hard time overcoming. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of those challenges. One is angel share. In bourbon and whiskey, it's a big one. It's over $14 billion lost every year. Evaporation is a normal part of the process. Angel share is a normal thing, but when it's excessive and you open a barrel up and half of the product is gone, it's a very big problem for them that they're facing. Spoilage is another one in the wine industry. It's over $7.6 billion. 1% of barrels go bad simply because of insufficient testing and insufficient labor to do the testing. They spend tens of millions of dollars on these issues, and they're losing on a lot of fronts. It's pretty clear that a better solution is needed, and continuous barrel monitoring is definitely needed as a part of this. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a use case real quick. So in bourbon, producers lack real-time data of their critical parameters, and they often misclassify their mid and premium product barrels, results in these billions of dollars lost that I talked about. I want to explain that a little bit more. So in the current method, they're putting at least 1,000 barrels a day in a large-scale facility every day into their rick houses. They let that age for about 2 to 4 years, and then a small number of those barrels are randomly selected. And from those samples they collect, they check the color, flavor, and alcohol. And if it meets their recipe, these become their premium barrels that they choose. The problem is because they don't know the contents and quantity inside, they are frequently misselecting the right barrels for this process. What we offer is the same barrels are going in 1,000 a day, but we'll have a percentage of those covered with our devices. You can see in the center when they first start out, those barrels are of course full. But then over time, as you see to the right, things happen differently for every single barrel. Because we're tracking that angel share, color, and alcohol, we're able to tell them exactly which barrels are the best candidates for their high level, their mid, and their normal level products. It's basically optimizing their quality, efficiency, and profitability. We're delivering over 300% ROI compared to their traditional methods. Our solution is not just hardware, it is also a platform with ML-powered insights and alerts across any number of locations geographically. Our data is globally collected historical and comparative data. There's nothing really like this that they've ever had before. It's real-time visibility of this entire process. Our immediate addressable markets are $10.6 billion. We are starting in bourbon whiskey this year. We then will follow with US wine. And then after that, in about year 2 or year 3, we're talking about EU wine as well. But that's not the whole story. As you extend this to every spirit that's out there, and you look at the global market value, right now it sits at $1.6 trillion. We've already been contacted by a number of conglomerates already asking, when are we going on the market? And because we're the only solution that could be applied to every single brand in their portfolio, we are a very desirable acquisition for them, and that's our likely exit strategy. We have a number of patents in the US space. We have PCT patents in the international one system, and we have an EPO patent. These are gradually increasing month after month as we find new innovations on our engineering and R&D side. We have no real direct competition. There are players on either they do a couple of things here in the wine space or a couple of things there in the spirit space, but no one does what we do across the board for the price that we can do it for. Net margins are 80% for our software, 30% for hardware. We're expecting a first year ARR of $5 million, and by year 3, that increases to $29 million. Traction to date, so we're signing Heaven Hill and Jim Beam. That's 4.9 million barrels for early beta testing. We have a collaborative study going with the Beam Institute. That's the leading academic center for American bourbon. We're going to present those findings at the Beam conference in March. And we have a high confidence level that these guys are going to convert to long-term partners because we've been seeing this work in both our lab and our engineering facilities for over a year. Our ask is a $10 million Series A equity round to accelerate growth. We've raised 3.8 million to date. We've oversubscribed every single round we've had, and I've put in $820,000 of my own money into the latest round. And we have an excellent team. We have extensive expert experience on the wine and spirits side, startups, exits, various industries, operations, business strategy. And then on our advisor side, we have some of the best people in winemaking and bourbon who not only know the production of these great products, but also understand the chemistry and the science behind them. And with that, I'll take any questions that anybody might have.
Yes, if you have questions, please put it in the chat box. It's enabled now. And with that, Mike, first question is, who is the competition and how are you better?
So some of the competition are, for instance, there's a company called Wine Grid. There's another one called Barrel Wise in the wine space. They do one or two things. For instance, they'll check one or two parameters. But the problem is because they only check one or two parameters, they're not completing the picture of what they would normally get from their labs every week. So we're able to do all the core parameters they need every day for them. And they're able to see the deltas over time, which is something you don't get with other solutions. And the other thing too is that their model is a direct buy model, which is extremely expensive for these guys. And in the bourbon space, there's really no player that's looking at doing anything inside a bourbon barrel. That's because there are so many challenges, and there's a rigorous UL certification that we're going through right now, and will be approved for as a Class 1 Div 1 device. There's a whole long list of differentiators we have. And again, like I said, the biggest one really is that we're the only one that we can adapt to any spirit, any wine within a conglomerate's portfolio, which means we can do rum, we can do tequila, we can do sake, we can do a lot of other spirits. Just tell us what the parameters are, and we set it up to check that and do that. So we have a lot of really great differentiators that position us really well as we go into the market.
Next question is there much of a variance noted from the random barrel sampling that this solution is needed?
There is, because what happens is when they randomly when they drill into these barrels, they don't understand how much is left of that barrel for each barrel. And we've had this told to us by master distillers that they'll pick the barrels that they think are best because on the outside, they won't have any visible leaks or anything of that nature. But it still doesn't mean that it's the best, most full, most best color barrel to be using as a premium product. And they can't very well go and drill into every single barrel every day because it's a very tedious, labor-intensive process. So a lot of times, yes, they're picking the wrong barrels that there's 2 gallons here, 3 gallons there that they could have had for a premium product. And every gallon that's saved is 5 more bottles of their premium product. So it's a pretty substantial amount of money that could be potential revenue that's lost because they are picking the wrong barrels when they drill into these things, simply because they're blind to what's going on.
Great. Can you talk about the exits in this space and what kind of return investors are seeing?
In this kind of space, it's a pretty good return. I mean, multiples are in the double digits in some cases. I mean, we're looking at a lot of these startups that are comparable. Hall, I know you did a light sort of valuation study for us, but there's some pretty healthy numbers that are coming in still in wine and spirits, even though there's shifting consumer demands and shifting interests in different spirits. The thing is that there's always going to be a need for wine and spirits, and the overall growth globally is strong and steady over time, no matter what really happens globally. So yeah, we're looking at really healthy multiples at the end when we expect to be acquired by a conglomerate within probably 2 or 3 years, I would imagine.
Great. Can you talk about the monetization model and how much of the revenue is recurring?
The model is based on so as far as retention, if that's what you mean, we expect to have a really strong retention. We think we're going to have growth. In other words, we'll have a minimal amount of coverage at first, maybe perhaps a couple of percent or 5% of their barrels when they have about 2 million barrels on site. But we expect that to grow over time. And again, these are 4-year contracts. So most of that money that we're seeing, and obviously first year, a lot of it's going into inventory creation, But that second year and that third year and onwards, it's increasing by quite a bit because one, once we have the inventory, we can keep using that inventory, of course, because we still own it because it's a SaaS model. But then also we're getting more margin gradually over time as we get better unit costs, better distribution, the volume itself alone, just in having the volume and inventory of devices and infrastructure behind the devices. So yeah, there's a lot of markers that we're seeing in our financial model that's going to grow pretty healthy over time.
Great. And the question is, what is your minimum investment from an angel investor, and do you have an SPV for small investors?
So we do have, just to be honest, to be clear, like we're going into our Series A, but we do have at the moment the tail end of a safe round that's being oversubscribed. We had originally wanted that to be a 500,000 round to build our trial devices, but it's going to go way over that. So we're expecting to kind of cap it at $1 million. The minimum on that round is 25K. We haven't looked at an SPV. We have done an SPV before through Carta, but at the moment we would consider it, I think, for that safe round, obviously. But for the bigger Series A round, I think we're more in a 250 or a 200 range for a minimum for people who want to subscribe. And we have had some end interest already from VCs and subscribing to that. We're just simply kind of looking to identify the lead and other people to get signed on to that round.
And last question is, can you talk more about the team and some of the key players there? What skills are bringing to this process?
Yeah, so myself, I have a lot of experience in the wine and spirit space. As I said, like I grew up in bourbon country. I worked quite a lot with Brown Foreman and others. Sazerac is out there as well. And as far as our team, I mean, Steve Kalen's on our team. He's got a lot of, he had a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund that he exited as part of a startup he had back in New York area, Connecticut area. Andrea is also a part of the team. She's had a massive amount of success. She was mostly in a healthcare and a data space and operations space. So she's handling a lot of our customer success. Reason being is because she had a lot of success at managing people and managing expectations and making sure people are happy with the results. So beyond that, I mean, David Becker, a lot of our people David Becker's on the financial side. He had a lot of experience with tech in that space. A lot of advisors have a lot of experience with tech and large scale tech and also startup level tech. A lot of the people that I was going to mention on the leadership team included are current investors. So they have a passion for what we're doing and they're getting involved even after they're investing. A lot of the money we have right now is smart money behind what we're doing.
Great. And that's it for the questions. Thanks so much for a great presentation, Mike.
All right. Thank you.
Next up is Biomes of Andrew Dahl. Andrew, you can launch your slides and kick off when ready.
Okay, great. So we have an end-to-end technology, captures the raw patient samples, processes, delivers lab quality results. That cartridge that you see there holds up to 10 different diagnostic tests, more than any other at point of need. But the big differentiator is that we can use commercially available lab tests. We can convert them to our platform. And basically, if you can operate a smartphone, you can administer a very sophisticated multi-analyte test pretty much anywhere. So this is really a breakthrough approach. There's no other test platform that can perform at this level outside a clinical lab. And what we're talking about is less than 1 part per trillion for a protein in urine. And we can use almost any biofluid as for a patient sample. So we're basically the hardware and software that can make slow, complex lab tests work faster, smarter outside the lab where they're needed most. And we not only provide the test results to the user or the clinician on the spot, but also simultaneously transmit results to providers, payers. There's an opportunity to monetize the data that we pull from the workflow to create additional streams. And our key differentiator here is both the quality and the timeliness of the data, which really rests on the precision and accuracy of the tests, which is, quite frankly, a core weakness of a lot of digital diagnostics and digital healthcare concepts, is that the quality of that first-party data. Now, we approach the diagnostics market opportunistically, and we develop tests in partnership with global brands tests that they think are important. So as a platform, we're really not tied to any single disease or condition. We're initially developing healthy aging, infectious disease, nutritional deficiency because there's non-dilutive funding available from the government, and there are corporate partners that want to enter these markets. And to validate our market traction with global brands and our business model, we've just inked a deal to develop a first-in-market canine Alzheimer's urine test with Hills Science Diet, which is a Colgate-Palmolive subsidiary. This is real revenue, begins with a sponsored feasibility study. That's followed by a roughly $2 million product development phase, and then a manufacturing contract with pre-negotiated margins and sales volumes. Now, lest you think a doggy Alzheimer's test is just an interesting sidebar or even a dead end, the data that we collect takes on greater significance when we apply it to humans. As it happens, gene signaling and disease pathway for Alzheimer's in dogs and humans are nearly identical, and as would be the diagnostics. So while we're getting paid to develop the test and then generate revenue selling doggy Alzheimer's, we're banking that data, we remap it, we submit it to the FDA to accelerate approvals for a first ever non-invasive human Alzheimer's test without having to change much of anything. So back to the doggy test, we can enter the market without FDA approval for the dog test. And as soon as we're done developing it, we go to market with Hills. Now imagine whatever number we negotiate with Hills for contract manufacturing of a dog test, you can probably put another 3 zeros behind it for a human test. Now, once that first test is on its way, we start adding new test products to establish multiple revenue streams. Gross margin ranges from 50% to 500%, depending on the selected diagnostic targets and what our corporate partner can get in terms of a reimbursement. And our sell prices will range from $10 to $140 per cartridge. Now, the sales projections that you're seeing there, those nice hockey sticks, aren't really market adoption guesses. Rather, they're estimates of contract sales that we're negotiating with corporate partners in advance. So, and things like reimbursement, CPT codes, launch expenses, that's what our corporate partners handle, is the commercialization aspect of it. We benefit basically from contracted sales, stable cash flow, instant global footprint. Now, our go-to-market strategy is our business model. So we target global brands that make, market, or offer diagnostics as a service. We initially approach them to do studies, collaborations, co-ventures, like we did with Hills. And that drives early revenue for us, but it also allows them to test drive our technology with very little risk, gives them an opportunity to consider a new program, and maybe eventually a potential acquisition. And that's really our stated goal, to be acquired. There's no need to build a huge organization to commercialize our technology or manufacture it. Those organizations already exist, and you just saw their logos. So an acquirer needs 2 questions answered. Does it work? Can we produce it in huge quantities at low cost? And then comes the specific value proposition, which in our case is the ability to use existing FDA-approved diagnostics already performed in a lab that we can convert to point of need or at-home use. And in doing so, we crush the cost of development, compliance, manufacturing, while we're outperforming what's available at point of need or at home. Now, in terms of where we are, the founders have already placed $3 million of their own money. We're working to close $2 million in seed funding to engineer and build end-to-end demonstrators. In other words, we have everything in bits and pieces, but we want to put it into a single demonstration package for our prospective corporate partners. And that's what this 2 million seed round will do. And then we'll derive revenues like this project from Hills for the Alzheimer's test. We're also pitching a healthy aging test to Procter and Gamble. So between the funding that we get from investors and the non-dilutive funding that we get from our corporate partners, we will have enough runway to pursue and close several more such contracts. That will then be followed by the $2 million late seed, where we want to be able to answer the second question, which is, can we make a lot of it cheap? And then at that point, I believe that we're in play. We will be, potentially acquired by that point. If not, we go to our next phase, land a manufacturing contract, and then go out for a Series A to fund manufacturing startup. What's interesting about this is that we can start modeling exit windows. With the first such window, as we mentioned, at about a 20-month time frame, where we're showing that the entire platform works end to end. And we have a small pilot site that demonstrates manufacturability before we go out for a Series A. So this then becomes kind of a risk return model. We can get out in less than 24 months with a good return, or we can get one OTC product to market in 30 months or multiple products and look at some very significant returns over the years with actually decreasing risk over time because we've got multiple revenue streams being developed. So we have the comps, models, case studies, market data to support the returns we're projecting. For an example, Quest paid $450 million to acquire Haystacks just 23 months after its $10 million seed round funded by Catalio Capital. That's a pretty darn good return. And it's happening because there are so few totally new technologies coming to market and very, very few at point of need or at home that break any new ground. Now, to get this moving, we're looking to close a $2 million seed round Q1 2025, fund the end-to-end platform demo we described. Again, we've put in $3 million in pre-seed funding, and we're able to produce our biosensors at 1,000 units at a time right now. So the sensor at the core of the whole platform. Use of proceeds is basically, let's get the demo units up and running in quantity within 12 to 14 months, close co-ventures and collaborations that bring in revenue, and then position us well for a $2 million late seed or bridge round to demonstrate manufacturability of this equation. Now we're a little bit ahead of schedule because we signed the co-development deal with Hills sort of in parallel as we're doing the demo development. So, we're looking to close another one very, very soon. Now, the development team that made this all possible, led by Chief Science Officer Michael Puja, considered one of the world's top 10 diagnostic innovators, decades of successful product launches at Siemens and Bayer. His protege, Dr. Zane Baird, VP R&D, directs our development lab in Colorado. Jake Kapla, our lead engineer, holds multiple degrees in math, physics, engineering. He's the resident whiz kid developing the hardware and software. Yours truly, been around in executive and consulting roles in medtech and biotech for the past 20 years. And Trevor Mason, not pictured here, has just joined as CFO, and we're actively recruiting additional C-level management pending available funding. That's pretty much it.
Great. Thanks for the presentation. The first question is there a data play here?
There's a very significant data play. If you're familiar at all with a lot of these companies that do quote unquote digital diagnostics or digital healthcare remote monitoring, it's the quality of the data that matters. If you're getting how do you feel data, or you're getting, body temperature and eye winks, then that's the data you're getting. We're getting super precise clinical lab quality results that can be input in terms of remote care monitoring. So it really enhances the game. Also, at the same time, we can pull the anonymized data, do meta-analysis, and sell it.
So what are the claims on the IP? How does that provide a moat around the business?
Okay, so the biosensor itself, the design of the biosensor, we've got a core patent. We've got 7 surround patents around its manufacture, how the data is generated by the sensor, the transmission of that data. So it's a fairly complex moat from a patent perspective. But we also have process things like how to functionalize the sensor, how to assemble the sensor that are being maintained as trade secrets. So we're not telling people fully how it works. Now we have a very robust trade secret protocol that would be turned over to a potential acquirer. But some of this stuff you don't want to patent because you don't want to show people how you're doing it.
That's great. And can you talk about some of the key players on the team and what skills they bring to it?
Okay, so Michael Puja, 100 plus published papers and posters in an industry where a diagnostic scientist can launch maybe 1 or 2 products in a career, major products. Puja has launched over 20. He's named in 450 US and international patents. So this guy has some considerable stature in the in vitro diagnostics industry. Is globally recognized. And then his protege has been working with him for 8 years now, 3 of those for us.
Okay, great. We're at the end of our time. Thanks for a great presentation, Andrew. Appreciate that. Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.